Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. The book is The Recruiter Guy's Guide to Finding a Job. The recruiter guy, Bill Humbert, joins me in studio.
Joe.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Good to have you, as always. All of a sudden, my voice goes away, right? When we come on the air, I don't know.
Right then, yeah.
I clearly need some coffee. So I'm excited to talk to you today because this is an area of something that goes on in Park City. That granted, there are nonprofits everywhere. Park City's got a lot of them.
Right.
And you'll hear a lot of things about the nonprofits here when it comes to employment amongst my peers. And so I got some difficult questions for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
I got some tough stuff.
You know, I'm always ready.
This is going to be hard. I think it's going to be a little tough. But there's a difference in recruiting for a nonprofit as opposed to a commercial business. Should we start there?
Sure.
What are the differences?
Well, commercial business is a revenue generating entity.
Right.
And so as part of that revenue generation, they're setting aside money for human resources, recruiting, and all the marketing and everything else. Mm-hmm. Whereas on the other hand, the nonprofit is generating income also, but it's pretty much as possible, the income is going to whatever its cause is.
Right.
And they typically don't have a lot of money to put on jobs on job boards,
right,
to do all of those, hire a recruiter, things like that. And so their recruiting is a little bit more difficult sometimes.
Okay. That makes good sense. And we've got a little chart here kind of showing some of the differences. So what are some of these?
Well, actually, there's no difference.
There's none.
There's a
Just
sales process and a recruiting process.
Really?
And it doesn't matter if the company is one that generates income for profit or one that generates income for a cause. They both mirror the sales process perfectly.
Okay. All right.
And that's important for the nonprofit directors to understand, because if they're following that process, then the recruiting effort will be a lot more successful.
All right, let's throw that graphic back up and let me ask you a couple of pointed questions here on that regard as well. So we'll throw that back up again. This is the difference in the lack of difference in this process.
The mirror, right.
So we got to identify the need for the recruiting process, a new replacement position, create a solution, job description, okay. Potential clients, of course that's the same, right? Needs analysis, interview, proposal and offer, those, obviously, like you said, they're very much the same, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they mirror perfectly, yep.
Now, the cost negotiation and compensation negotiation, is there, talk about the different wording here.
Yes, the cost negotiation is if you're a company and you're selling a product or a service, then what you're doing is you're going to negotiate with your potential clients what the cost will be, the deliverables, and everything that's tied to that negotiation.
Sure.
With employees, what you are doing is you're negotiating their salary, benefits, those negotiations. But it doesn't matter. Either way, it's still a cost negotiation.
At the end of the day. Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Okay. Still spending money.
Still spending money somehow.
All right. How about the sourcing? What's different about that?
Well, in sourcing, business is generating income for its business. They're going to sometimes throw a lot of money at LinkedIn Recruiter. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, it was Monster and Career Builder. And then there's a ton of niche internet job boards. The nonprofit doesn't have the money to put towards those job boards.
Yeah.
And so they have to be a little bit more creative in terms of how they add staff, and then also how they add volunteers, because you're recruiting both of those.
Right.
Okay? And so for the nonprofit, it's important for them to do things like network. Mm-hmm. Heard that from me before.
Yeah, we have. As I say, that's pretty, really we should be using that all the time for both, but we don't.
Right.
But super important when it comes to a nonprofit.
That's right. And so how do you source if you're a nonprofit? Well, who are your volunteers? Are they passionate about your cause?
Do they want to come on full-time?
Or part-time?
Part-time, sure.
So for a nonprofit, you have to be more flexible because you're not going to pay business compensation rates.
Right.
You can't afford to.
Yeah.
In some cases they may be able to. I can think of a couple of large nonprofits that can and do.
Certainly.
But most of them can't do that. So they have to be a lot more creative in determining work schedules.
Let's talk about that. I mean, that's down the list a little bit, but let's get to it right now because this is the biggest criticism among my peer group about nonprofits, especially here in Park City, that many of those nonprofits at the high end part of them, the people running them, seem to do very, very well. And then they'll ask for somebody to come in and work in the, in the development side, which is the part that's bringing in all the money, and the compensation is completely out of whack with the ability to live here. Not even just, and we can go further and say to live at all, anywhere.
Right.
It's that bad. The disparity is enormous.
Right.
At that point, you've got to look at some other points like, as you mentioned, the work schedule, something like that makes some sense. And then I've even seen that abused at the same level, along with the pay. And I'm kind of at that point, I'm kind of at a loss for why anyone would think that sounds appealing.
Well, it may not be appealing, and for many people, going to college isn't appealing. Yeah.
So you're saying you're sort of paying your dues a little bit,
are you? Paying your dues. You got to, let's think about this from a resume builder perspective.
Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to be a development professional and bring money into the nonprofit that I'm working for.
Okay.
Now I have two choices. I can complain and not do the job, or I can knock the cover off the ball and say, I increased the revenue, the development revenue, by 300% in 1 year.
Right.
Now, one of two things is going to happen. Either that nonprofit is going to figure out a way through their board to give you some more money as a reward and recognition, or you're going to say, I got a resume.
Yeah.
And I can take this to a larger nonprofit and be much more successful financially. So it's a matter of passion about the cause, number one. That's really important. But number two, paying the dues, demonstrating success, and then going out and becoming more successful from a compensation perspective.
This can be difficult for many people because depending on their personal situation at that time, whether that's a possibility, if they have a family, if they don't, whether they are or aren't in school, perhaps they're paying off student loans. I mean, you think about this. I look at some of these jobs. I'm like, these people got to realize to get the qualifications to get that job, you're probably in debt up to your eyeballs to begin with. Mm-hmm. There are some significant challenges for almost anybody. In that world. Should we expect that the payoff is that fast if we can prove our mettle in that period? Is that fairly typical to be able to say, look, I have raised the bottom line. This is how much I've done it. I've done it in 6 months or a year. At that point, I mean, what I've seen, and this is what kind of worries me a little bit, is some of these nonprofits are like, oh, well, we can coast now.
Right.
Thank you for your hard work. Right. This even happened and I'm just going to share a little personal. One of the biggest companies I worked for, I increased their bottom line by 200 and something % in less than a year, about 8 months. It's significant. It should have been fine. I should have been well compensated the next year for that, right? But instead they went, yeah, and you know what? We don't need anybody now. Thank you.
Hey. Yeah.
That was kind of a problem. I worked myself right out of a job.
Well, I get that, and I work myself out of a job on every recruiting contract too.
Right,
and that's
if
what
you
I'm
do it right,
to
you've
do.
worked yourself out of a job. Okay,
and that's what I'm supposed to do. Your situation is different because you're not a contractor; you're an employee,
right.
And you expect some reward and recognition for that, and so sometimes that does happen. I can't tell you that everybody.
This is a matter of sometimes just the quality of the employer too, right?
Right. And, you know, they're branding themselves as an employer by doing those kinds of things. And, you know, you're going to talk, you know, obviously on the air, you're not going to give that company's name, but you're going to talk to your friends, and it's probably not going to be very complimentary.
Eventually, that's going to get back to them at some point.
What's going to happen is it's going to impact their hiring at some point. And it doesn't matter if we're in a large city or in a small city. Those things do get back to the general population. Everybody knows 250 people.
Right.
And, you know, and so you start thinking about that. Well, yeah,
the exponential growth of that message is huge.
That's right. So I wouldn't go to work for that nonprofit or that company because this is what happened to a friend of mine. So it's one of those things where it's important to realize that you can't come in and expect to be an executive. But if you contribute and show something to the bottom line, then you can, maybe not there or somewhere else.
All right. We skipped ahead a little bit, so let's go back for a minute. Boards can help you source some people, right?
Boards are huge. If you bring the right people on your board, who are they? Generally, they're business executives who are trying to contribute back to the community, or their spouses. They know tons of people. Their network is even bigger than this whole studio.
Right.
It's huge. You could fill the studio 5 times with the people who are close to them. And those people, again, know people. And so if they're on a board, they can say, hey, the nonprofit that I'm on a board for is looking for this kind of person. Who do you know that I should maybe either contact or tap into? Okay. So boards can be huge.
Again, I think this is another place where LinkedIn, as you've mentioned so many times in this program, becomes vital, right? Because that, an awful lot of the time, we're looking for somebody who can come in and step in a role like this with a nonprofit. That may be the best place to find somebody like that.
Exactly. You know, and do a search on that cause in the LinkedIn search box. And what will happen is all of the people who are on LinkedIn, you could do Habitat for Humanity and Salt Lake City, for instance. And everybody in Salt Lake City who put Habitat for Humanity as one of their interests will pop up in the search box.
Okay.
Boy, you talk about...
That's pretty easy.
Yeah, and it's free.
It's like that's like the easy button right there.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. I like it. Speaking of that, let's talk about your side of this too. You've got some passions out there, some things you want to be part of as well. You ever looked to be on a board somewhere?
You know, I would love to be on a board here in Park City. You know, it would have to match my interest, of course.
Right.
But I was a co-founder of the first endowment for a public elementary school in Frederick County, Maryland. Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I was on the foundation board for a school district and protected their endowment, and it's now over $1 million. So that means the nonprofit gets $50,000 per year,
right,
just off of the interest of that endowment.
Yeah.
And I helped start an endowment here in Park City already, and I talked to them, and what they're doing is they're reinvesting the interest and growing their endowment.
That's awesome.
Yep. So I have board experience, and
so looking for something that you're passionate about.
I'm looking for something that I'm passionate about.
Well, I sure hope we help you find that. LinkedIn, buddy.
LinkedIn, yeah. I've made some calls around town, you know.
Well, I got a couple of friends too, about 250 of them I need to touch and see what they say about where we can find a recruiter guy, Bill Humbert, aboard. Keep you busy.
That's right. I hate to see me bored. That's a bad thing. That's
right?
a different board.
That is a different board. As always, we sure appreciate it. Good information. Again, if you're thinking about nonprofits, there are some very distinct differences, which we've discussed, certainly. And as always, appreciate you being here, buddy.
Thanks, Joe.
What else going on? Anything exciting?
Building my speaking business. Really excited about that. I have 3 speaking engagements this week. 2 are webinars, and 1 I'm speaking to the professional MBA program at the University of Utah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Terrific stuff. All right, it's recruiter guy Bill Humbert. He's here to help you recruit for your business, for your nonprofit. Hey, and he's available for your board too. Maybe you should tap into him. Got a lot more coming up here on the Mountain Morning Show right after this.